Ever heard of Jonathan Greenblatt? He's a former Obama White House official and now heads up the ADL. That's the Anti-Defamation League, a US nonprofit founded in 1913 with the mission of combating anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry. But while the ADL is an American organization, it's also been a prominent supporter of Israel and views the defense of Israel and fight against anti-Semitism in the US as one and the same thing. So what do? Advocacy and policy is one area, with the ADL lobbying lawmakers on civil rights, hate crime legislation, and foreign policy, especially regarding, you guessed it, Israel. They also do research and monitoring, run anti-bias training programs in schools, workplaces, and law enforcement, and they file lawsuits in cases involving hate crimes, religious freedom, and civil rights. As mentioned, the ADL has long monitored extremist groups and political activists. In the 90s, it was embroiled in a domestic spying controversy in San Francisco, where it obtained police files and shared information with organizations, including, allegedly, an Israeli consulate employee. That scandal led to lawsuits and reforms, but it did not prove the ADL was an Israeli intelligence front. But given its eagerness to influence US policy in a pro-Israel direction, it's worth asking, who does the ADL serve? The US or Israel? Washington or Tel Aviv? If it has to choose, who comes first? Israelis or Americans? Well, in a recent interview with JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service channel on YouTube, Greenblatt provided something of an answer. But before we look at that particular clip, here is Greenblatt, along with JBS host Taisha Bader, discussing man of the moment and Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York, Zohran Mamdani.
I want to talk about Zohran Mamdani. He won the Democratic primary for the New York mayoral race. It's just a New York mayoral race, but it has repercussions, I think, across the country. There are several issues that the Jewish community has with him. He supports BDS. He says, yes, Israel has the right to exist. First of all, why is Israel the only country? It's an insane question to ask. Does Israel have a right to exist? We don't ask this question about any other country in the world, but that's another conversation. And he's like, yes, as a Jewish state, he would not answer that question. And then the thing that people are really talking about, not condemning this phrase, globalize the Intifada, because he says, well, it means different things for different people.
What is going on here? The Jewish community don't like Zohran Mamdani. The Jewish community, he was backed by Brad Lander. Right now, he is polling number one amongst, you guessed it, Jewish people in New York City. But I presume they're not the Jewish community because you don't agree with them. They're not the real Jewish community. They're the fake Jewish community because they don't agree with me. The real one, the authentic ones, they're the ones that agree with everything I say. See how it works? That's community-based politics, folks. You get powerful vested interests, and the legitimate voices within that community, the Jewish community, the Iranian community, are the ones that agree with me. The whole point of democratic politics is that we take each person on their own basis. We judge a person by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, certainly not by their communal ties and affiliations. That would be prejudice, by the way. And then she says about Israel having the right to exist. We don't say this about any other country. No country on God's green earth has the right to exist. No country. No country. Stupid talking point. Thousands of historical entities have. Did Assyria have a right to exist? Because guess what? It don't exist no more. Did the Roman Empire have a right to exist? Because guess what? It ain't there. There's a country called Italy instead. Stupid. But there definitely is one country which doesn't have a right to exist. It's called Palestine. No other country do we say this about. Yes, we do. It's the entire basis of the project and program of your party of government in Israel, Likud. That's the basis of Likud. Palestine shouldn't exist. But we never say it about anybody else. So you've got somebody talking about the Jewish community ventriloquizing that, even though, like I say, most New York Jews support Mamdani now, if polls are to be believed. And then she's got this leading question about Israel's right to exist. You're the journalist. Don't ask the leading questions like that. Anyway, here's how Greenblatt replied.
Look, ADL's a 501c3, so we don't get involved in electoral politics. I have questions for every candidate. Doesn't matter how they should affiliate politically. as it relates to this particular person who cut his teeth as a student organizer, for Students for Justice in Palestine, as someone who's worked as a DJ before serving in the state assembly. So as far as I know, he has no relevant private sector, even public sector experience. He hasn't administered anything. And as an assemblyman, this person supported the Not on Our Dime Act, which would prevent nonprofits from raising money for organizations with whose politics he doesn't like as it relates to Israel. So he would prevent, say, Hatzalah from doing fundraisers, or Magen David Adom in New York.
Wow. Because
they, quote unquote, support the occupation, whatever that means.
Well, I'll tell you what it means. It means raising funds for illegal settlements in the West Bank. That's what it means. Illegal under international law. How could you? Wow, really? I don't want supports of that being able to fundraise in the UK either. Being able to make the most of the tax regime we grant to non-profits and NGOs either. Why would you? They're illegal settlements. Israel right now is ensconced in a war. Every day it's perpetrating war crimes. Why would I want organizations locally to be fundraising for that to be continued? Any sensible person would at least understand why one might have a problem with that. And you've got Greenblatt at the top of that clip saying, this guy is a DJ. He's never administered anything. Guess what he administered? A campaign he won. That's what matters. He administered a campaign where he beat the candidate you prefer. Of course, you can't say that because you don't have political preference, although you clearly do, because you're talking about the guy who's the Democrat nominee for the mayor of New York being a former DJ and having no experience. Greenblatt is pursuing fairness and justice for American Jews. Of course he is. The ADL is not about putting the interests of Israel above those of Americans, Jewish or otherwise, right? Of course. It's an organization based and built in America. Well, have a watch of this and judge for yourself.
The national symbol, let's say, of Hezbollah is a rifle. That's what's on their flag. The national symbol of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, is a sword. That's what's on their flag. The national symbol of Israel is the shield. It's the Star of David. The symbol of our people is not a weapon of war. It's an instrument of defense. The thing that most embodies our entire ethos is not harming others. It's, again, creating a better world. This is fundamental to our tradition for thousands of years. And so the idea that our national anthem would be the Hatikva, would be the hope, I should say it's the Israel's national anthem. But I think it speaks to the Jewish longing that whether you're a Jew, I don't know, in New York City or in Nairobi, Kenya, like we all have this shared sense of hope next year in Jerusalem, that the world should be better, that we should be able to return. That is a profound, extraordinary idea.
Who does this guy work for? What is his country? Because he says our multiple times there. I think 4 times, our anthem, our flag, before correcting himself. When he says our, he originally means Israel. Did I say that? I mean the US. I'm an American, of course. I'm an American patriot. Imagine if I did that. I'm a British Iranian. Imagine if I said the Iranian national anthem is our anthem, our symbolism, our values, our Prophet Muhammad. If I talked about our hidden Imam, Imam's Imam, Ya Ali, Ya Hussein, our people, next year. Who the fuck is this guy? I'd be crucified by the right-wing media. The same right-wing media that give people like this a free pass. If you're an American Jew, guess what? You're an American. If you're a British Jew, guess what? You're British. And if there is an American Jew who doesn't identify with Israel, by the way, there are many of them. I'm not saying the majority, but there's many of them. Are they not part of the our thing, Mr. Greenblatt? If an American Jew is not a Zionist, and he's referring to Zionist Jews there, next year Israel, then are they not part of the our? Are they part of the enemy as well? James, what do you make of those clips?
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably have just one thing to say, but I think it's important. I mean, Greenblatt is not wrong that there is a long, wonderful, and important, and beautiful, and often very moving history of Jewish thought about outsiderness, about the importance of the marginalized and the excluded, the gleaner at the side of the fields. Remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt. This is all a huge, huge part of Jewish and diasporic tradition. And it has long been the critique of anti-Zionist thinkers prior to the state of Israel existing. So we're talking, criticisms within the Jewish community, long before 1948. That associating this, that this is the kind of thing that will burn up in the sort of violent nationalist project that's entailed about, in the establishment of a state like Israel. David Cleon, who's an editor at I think N+1, recently shared some concern that basically Jewish communal institutions find themselves effectively, destroying themselves in an attempt to justify what is now a kind of militaristic, ethno-nationalist, chauvinist state in the Middle East, and that presents a huge problem, for Jewish communal organizations worldwide. I think that problem is going to be acute and remain acute, and I suppose I think that's a very difficult thing to confront. I would just say on his thing about the Jewish symbol being the Magen David, the shield of David. Sure, but look at the photos. Look at every Israeli politician signing bombs gleefully. Every Israeli celebrity, inscribing these messages of utter contempt and hatred for Palestinians on weapons of war. You want to tell me that's not a national symbol as well? Come on.
And it's also a very recent symbol. The Magen David is not thousands of years old. It's a symbol of 19th century nationalism, which is what modern Zionism is. Again, where did Zionism come from? It's originally contrived by American evangelicals, Christian Zionists are the first Zionists. I talk about all of this with Ilan Pappé. Great interview right here on the YouTube channel here at Novara Media. Over 2 million views. It's really worth watching. It's quite extraordinary. And I mean, look, you might be thinking, Aaron, why do you care about this stuff? Well, like I said, I'm half Iranian. I believe that multiculturalism can work, right? I don't think you have to have monoethnic states for that state to succeed and for people to get on and to enjoy basic rights and civility and to move forward in a spirit of solidarity and comity and togetherness. I don't think you need to do that. And the whole point of Zionism is that Jews in this country, British Jews or French Jews or American Jews, the whole point of Zionism is that they're not really British. They're not really American. Their real country is Israel. Their real country is Israel. Which is, by the way, why the far right love it so much. They love that idea. The two big supporters of the idea of Israel before 1945 were people like Herzl, coming out of a tradition of 19th century nationalism, but also lots of far-right racists. They didn't want Jews in Europe. Okay, go over there. Great. Again, talked about at length by Ilan Pappé. It is a massive threat to the idea of multiculturalism. If all of a sudden anybody who's not entirely 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, white British, if they're not all that, then actually secretly belong somewhere else. That's what it means. That's what it means. And it's terribly dangerous. Do I have more in common with a multi-millionaire Los Angeles Iranian? Their parents are plastic surgeons. They vote Republican. They want the downfall of the regime. Do I have more in common with them than a white British person in this country who hasn't got 50 quid in the bank? They're struggling with their kids at home. They're struggling to pay the mortgage. They have to pay the bills. They want a better life for themselves. And they want to look after their parents and make sure that their community is doing okay. Who have I got more in common with? I've got more in common with the second person because of something called class. I believe in class. I believe in a politics that centers on class. Doesn't mean the other stuff is completely unimportant. I think Iranian culture, for me, it's a big deal. But my country is this country. And the people I feel most affinity with are people of a similar class background because they live a similar kind of life. Not because of the color of their skin, or the language they speak, or the food they eat.